The urban growth boundary is, I think, a concept that is incredibly important to be able to do really two things. One is to be able to protect very valuable farm and forest lands. And secondly, to ensure that the development that occurs within the urban growth boundary is cost effective. It's efficient, which really means that it is not as spread out and sprawled. It needs to be able to be efficiently organized. Now, on that latter point, let's be clear. It is about the road system. It's about the sewer and the water supply. It's about a whole series of public infrastructure investments that, very frankly, we cannot afford to be able to continue to be able to have our infrastructure chase spread out development. In the case of Oregon, we pioneered in the United States land use laws. In the early 1970s, we put in place the first comprehensive statewide land use laws, and it was based on the concept of an urban growth boundary, a place where urbanized activities would occur inside, and that for us, farm and forest lands would be protected outside. And candidly, for us, what was at issue at the time those laws were put in place was not so much the focus on the urban side. It was to be able to protect very important farm and forest lands. And what we were seeing is the fact that a small little subdivision would go in and the ability to be able to then have timber harvesting or agricultural activity next to residences produced real conflict. People may have thought that the rural lifestyle was very attractive until they began to hear those tractors out there at 5 a.m. Or they started hearing the cows mooing in the middle of the morning, or waiting to be able to be milked at night. The fact that fertilizers and hopefully to a minimal degree, but still pesticides, herbicides must be applied. Those issues produce automatic conflicts. And certainly from the forestry side, much the same. And so we had a real commitment that said those businesses, those types of activities need to be able to be preserved. And in fact, we cannot preserve them if in fact what we have is constant subdivisions going in, or lands being divided in a way that just meant that they weren't going to be large enough to be profitable for those very agricultural businesses. Here in the greater Adelaide area, you have the strongest reasons to protect those lands. The Barossa and the McLaren Vale being world famous, highest quality wine production areas. It would be incredibly sad if, in fact, those areas were, in fact, compromised by being able to see more urbanized, suburbanized type development encroaching upon them. And so from my standpoint, it is critically important to be able to make that urban growth boundary be a firm boundary, to be one that isn't porous. And I like to remark that one of the best ways to tell if it really is a boundary is to look at what the going prices are for land on either side of that boundary. If in fact on one side the farm non-urbanized area is really at acreage selling, at hectare selling at farm land prices, and the side on the other is at higher prices, reflecting a potential for subdivisions and other, then you know your boundaries being taken seriously. If it's not, if the land prices are virtually the same, it means that the marketplace is telling you they don't believe it. They don't believe that that's a real boundary. And to my way of thinking, those boundaries have got to be firm. If they are to be expanded, and at times they must be, they have to go through an incredibly rigorous process. I do believe that it's important to be able to have statutory law protection, not just guidance, not just regulation, but statutory protection of that, and that a process that is a very rigorous process must be gone through before there can be new lands brought into the urban growth boundary.